Coming all the way from Australia, our good friend James is coming on to the show today. He's done copywriting, ghostwriting, and really built up some of his businesses. Just a fun personality. We're going to learn a lot from James today and kind of how living in different parts of the world, communicating and working with the #1 consumer economy, how that helps his business, how we're adapting to working with people all over. It's going to be a banger, friends. Enjoy the morning show. Cheers. Good morning, and welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Talk Taryn Morning Show, where we go over tips, tricks, ideas, and exercises to help make you the absolute best person you can be, not only for yourself, but for the people you love and care about most. Everyone give a warm welcome to my main man, James, coming on the show. James, how are we doing today?
Morning, Tanner. I'm great, mate. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's we're actually at a different time right now, and because you're all the way out in Australia, what time is it for you out there?
Yeah, I'm coming to you from the future, brother. It's I believe I'm like at least 12 hours ahead, so it's 11 o'clock in the morning here. I'm about I don't know if you guys know, I'm about 8 hours north of Sydney, so
Okay.
kind of top east corner, northeast corner of Australia. But yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to be with a global audience.
Yeah. So there, your main city, Sydney, and then you're about 8 hours north of that. What's even like the climate? I've never been to Australia, and I would love to go. But what's like kind of the climate like out there, like the weather and
The
stuff
weather,
for you?
yeah. I mean, well, for a start, it's the southern hemisphere, so it's the opposite of you guys. So you guys are in winter, we're in the middle of summer. So
Uh,
you know, we never have a white Christmas here. It's always stinking hot. But where I am, so
yeah.
Sydney's like halfway. If you think about the east coast of Australia, Sydney's kind of halfway up, and then I'm another, 8 hours north of there. The weather is pretty like I think they call it subtropical, man. It's sort of like it's not that really bad humidity, but it's pretty warm all
Mhm.
year round. It doesn't really
Yeah.
get cold here. Um, I don't know whether this will mean anything to your guys, but I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but in Celsius, like right now, it's like 30 degrees Celsius, which I think is like 90 something maybe in Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's pretty warm. It's pretty warm all year round, man. We don't get snow, we don't get anything like that, and yeah, it's middle of summer right now, so.
What's you gotta humor me. What's is there any like unique activities that you get to do close to where you live that wouldn't be super common in America? Anything come to mind?
Oh, look, everything we can do here, you guys can do. I mean, like I'm in a place called just out the back of a place called Byron Bay, so I'm pretty much on the coast. There's a lot of good surf here, a lot of
Oh,
good
amazing.
waves. But we're in a really special spot where you have almost like that subtropical rainforest. It's really green, and then it kind of
Hmm.
hits the beaches. So you've got that mix of like bush and rainforest, and then you've got beautiful beaches. So I mean, there's plenty of that in America, but yeah, it's pretty spectacular up here. I mean, you can get everything in one spot. You've got surf, you've got hiking, there's mountains, there's rainforest, there's all
Hmm.
kinds of wildlife. I think, that's one of the special things about Australia is that there's like everything in one spot. Um,
Right.
but yeah, there's nothing uniquely unique here that you guys don't have, but I think yeah, it's a great spot anyway.
That's interesting. Well, we've connected through X, formerly known as
Yeah,
Twitter for folks.
yeah.
And I noticed, do you work mainly with like people in America or in Australia, or who are you kind of working with more
Yeah,
of the
at the
time?
moment, I would say most of my clients. So I do a kind of I've got like a private kind of little one-on-one coaching kind of gig going on, which I've been doing for a number of years. But
Mhm.
most of those guys are in the US. There's a couple of guys in Europe, but yeah, most of the people that I interact with on X at the moment seem to be in the US, Europe. I've got a couple of clients. One girl's in Mexico, one girl's in South Africa. So it's pretty
Oh,
spread, but I
cool.
would say I think I've got a good mix of people that I work with, but the majority of the audience, like the people that I talk to and the people that interact with my content on X, are definitely US based, I would say. And I suspect that's just representative of X in general. I think a lot of people on there are in the US. But yeah, I work with a whole bunch of different people, man. But I love working with Americans. I think it's just like there is a noticeable cultural difference in just like enthusiasm and like the way, I think just generally people in the US have this idea, this concept that anything is possible. And I think it comes through in the
Yeah.
way that they want to work with people. They're really, nothing is impossible. And that makes it really easy to work with people from the US because they take things and run because they don't have as many limiting beliefs, I think. Which,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
That's interesting.
I love people in the US, man. I love it.
That's super cool. Well, I guess before we dive into it, so we get a better idea of kind of what it is that what you do, would you take a few minutes to kind of talk about copywriting, ghostwriting? Is that like the main thing that you're doing nowadays, or like what's your main focus in business? What you do?
I wouldn't say so. I do have a background in ghostwriting. It's definitely not the main thing that I do anymore. I did do it for a while, particularly during lockdowns. I did a lot of like the actual, I guess, the job of doing ghostwriting is really, it's a tough gig. But my background on social media anyway is definitely in ghostwriting. When it comes to copywriting, I think that like everyone's a copywriter, whether they label themselves that or not.
Yeah.
If you're writing stuff, realistically, you're a copywriter, and particularly anyone that's on X. But I don't have a formal background in copywriting at all. I kind of just fell into it. But with the guys that I work with, I predominantly like the stuff that I'm pushing on X at the moment is really helping people with to monetize their content. So a big part of monetizing the content is obviously you have to make the content, which means you need to have some kind of, I guess, skill in copywriting. And like I said, whether you label yourself as a copywriter or not, I think if you're communicating through writing, then essentially you're you're a copywriter. But I help people do that. I learn a lot of stuff as a ghostwriter, which I'm now helping people do for themselves. I think the biggest learning that I had as a ghostwriter was definitely not so much about the actual writing itself, but about how important it is to monetize your writing. And I think they're related, but they're different skills. But yeah, when it comes to copywriting, I think, everyone's a copywriter, and I think it's a really important skill to be able to write well. I think, clear thinking comes from clear writing, or the reverse. I think if you can distill your thoughts clearly and communicate clearly through the written word, I think it really makes you think more concisely and more clearly. So I think it helps with that. But definitely people on X are all copywriters. So
Yeah. This I see all different styles of writing. Have you been always a fan of writing? Do you just kind of write on your own time? Are you a journaler or anything like that?
I'm not a journaler, dude, but I have done a lot of writing. Like I'm actually a lawyer by training. So I was way back in the day. I went through law school and worked as a lawyer, and the big skill there. The fundamental skill that you learn in law school is how to communicate concisely and clearly.
Writing, and is there a particular style of writing that you like to do, or things that you've done?
Not particularly. I think that the goal of writing should always just be as clear as possible. I think at the end of the day, like the goal should be, particularly on a platform like X, where you have a realistically really limited window to get your idea across. You need to be clear and concise rather than trying to be clever. I think that's something that I learned as a lawyer really early, is that like I think a lot of people that come from a strict writing background, they get fascinated with the idea of like writing really well. And certainly if you're like a novelist or something, you know, being able to write well is a really, really great skill. But when it comes to communicating, whether through social media or otherwise, the skill is not about how well you write in terms of, you know, vocabulary or grammar, or like, it's more about how clear and concise you can be in communicating what it is you're trying to communicate. And a big part of that is obviously storytelling and all those types of things. But I think I don't really have a set kind of style of writing. It's more about how can I communicate this idea as clearly as possible, with a bunch of things with like, you know, you need to keep in mind, what are you actually trying to achieve with that piece of content? Like, are you trying to, you know, I like to think about it through like branding, community or value, but like these different things have different kind of end pieces and different goals. But at the end of the day, it's about being clear, not being clever per se. So yeah, I don't think you need to be an exceptional writer. I just think you need to be able to communicate clearly.
Interesting. Well, this you have me curious now. With kind of talk to me about are you still practicing law? Was that why'd you get out of it? What was your journey with that?
Yeah, I mean, I went through law school and I worked for a couple of years as a lawyer, and I mean, I worked in commercial law. So the one of the big law firms here in Australia, actually not where I am now, in Melbourne, which is right down the bottom of Australia. But corporate law, like commercial corporate law, it's just like desk jockey. Like, I mean, you would call it 9 to 5, but as a lawyer, 9 to 5 is just not accurate. It's more like 8 to 10, you know. But I think the idea of like, you know, sitting at a desk all day, just pumping out work for work's sake, like we were, you know, billable hours, all that stuff. It was just not my thing. And I actually ended up doing a couple of big jobs with some mining companies here in Australia, which actually got me out of the office on some really good secondments. But the thing was, like getting away from that, it really became obvious that I enjoyed working with the clients. So we had a lot of big commercial clients, and what interested me was the clients and the clients' work rather than the work that I was doing, which was just interesting. I mean, when you're a junior lawyer, you're just drafting, like we were talking about before, like writing. And you know, you don't get any credit for that, that's how it is. Like the senior associates, they're the ones that always are responsible for the work, but the junior guys are the ones that do the grunt work. But it was just a lot of hours at a desk and billing and you know, I wanted to do something else, I guess. You know, like it was just, I think one of the things with commercial law is that if you're not set on kind of that path to become a partner, there really isn't really much point in doing it. I mean, like that's from my perspective. And I think when it comes to becoming a partner, you either know or you don't know pretty early, because you know, a lot of the difference is like, so this is a bit of a tangent, but the idea is like the way law firms keep people there, because it's shitty work, dude. Like no one could honestly say that like those early years they really enjoy that kind of grind.
Oh, I'm sure.
But they incentivize you with really good salaries. And so but the thing is, like, you know, my first couple of years as a lawyer, you know, I was working 80-90 hours a week on average. And the pay goes up really steeply after a few years, but you never get the hours back. Like you're always like, you might be getting paid a lot, but you're always on that 80-90 hours. You know, if you're lucky, you might get 60 or 70, but
you're working like 2 jobs. Yeah,
and you never get it back. So the thing is, like, it looks good on paper, so they just keep like that, dangling that carrot. It's like, yeah, we'll keep paying you more and more and more, and it looks good. But if you don't have the time to, you know, do anything fun with the money or have any real life experiences, it's kind of like, well, what's the point? And so back to my point about being a partner is like, I think the only people that really make it up that career ladder as a partner are the people who they love that. Like they love the 80 or 90 hours.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to,
that's what gets them off, you know, like, and so like if you already know that that's not your gig, if you already know that, you know, if you're kind of hanging out in a big law firm, hoping one day you're going to be able to work 40, a normal 9 to 5, you kind of, that's delusional, dude. And so, I kind of knew that early on, and I was like, it's a good place to kind of cut your teeth, I guess. You get a lot of work, a lot of experience in the corporate world, and like I said, you work with really good clients, which is awesome. But the actual work itself is pretty boring. So I kind of did that for about 2.5 years, and actually kind of went almost all the way the other way. I ended up hooking up with a guy that I went to uni with, and we started a startup. We founded a startup, which was an online like grocery delivery company.
Oh,
so
cool.
I kind of bounced out of a, I guess you would say, super stable kind of risk-free corporate role right into the other end of the spectrum of the super
entrepreneurship.
risky, and that was super fun. And I was young, so I wasn't really, my expenses were low, so I had that kind of saved a bit of money, and I had that kind of ability to take that risk. But I was never going to be a lawyer long term. I kind of knew that pretty early, and so it was sort of like I had to get out before I got too trapped.
Yeah, this feeling of being trapped, I'm sure so many of us can relate to. I'm curious what you think. Was it something that you learned, or something that somebody told you, or you're just kind of aware that this wasn't really for me? I feel like people wait like 2 decades before they get slapped in the face, and they're like, what am I giving all my time to?
Yeah. I mean, I always have had this kind of, I guess you'd say, curiosity for adventure. I always wanted to do stuff. And so I knew, like, even during law school, like I knew that I wasn't going to do like strict legal work forever.
Wow.
There were a number of reasons why I kind of kept at it. But like what you're talking about, like people get decades into their career, and it's that kind of like the golden handcuffs thing, dude. Like I think there's that point. I knew really early on that there's kind of like a cliff when you're like, if you get comfortable in a role like that, and then you start taking on responsibilities that are like lifelong responsibilities. So for example, you start a family, you get married, you start a family, and you buy a house and you have a mortgage.
Yeah.
If those are the conditions if you're in a job that you don't like and you take on those lifelong responsibilities, those are the conditions in which you take those responsibilities. So your job basically are really hard to change later, because unless you kind of backtrack on your responsibilities, which is obviously no one intends to do that. But if you've got kids, a mortgage, and a wife, and the only way that you've known to support that is with your shitty job that you hate. Once you've got those responsibilities, going and quitting your job that is a huge risk. And I've seen that happen so much. That's the classic golden handcuffs, is that like you hate it, but it's the thing that's supporting the rest of your life and essentially your responsibility. So I knew early on that there was that kind of cliff where like pretty soon I'm going to want to start to take on some of those responsibilities. And I knew that I didn't want to be tied to this job that I hated when I did that. I wanted to be in a space where I guess, you have the freedom to live the life that you want whilst also making a good living. Because I feel like this is just my kind of philosophy on this. I feel like you want to have those things set. You want to be doing something that you love before you take on all those responsibilities. Because like I said, it's really hard to change the thing later on.
Yeah, man. It seemed, I liked how you put it, the golden handcuffs. We take on these responsibilities and stuff. I mean, but what if you already are in that position? Say you're married and you have a child, and things happen and people change. So interests change, and so any advice you think for people who are maybe in that position, and is just get an emergency fund, or like what do you think's the answer for these folks?
I mean, I don't know. I guess a lot of people will just say, try and, things like side hustles and stuff like that. It really depends on what the situation is. And this is like to relate it back to what I was doing and why I'm not against having a 9 to 5. Like, I think that if you can do something that you don't have to love it. Like a lot of people make that decision. You know, you can do a 9 to 5 and that supports the lifestyle that you love. That's great.
Yeah.
I just knew that, you know, going back to what I was saying, like if you're working 80 hours a week,
Yeah.
you're not ever going to have the time to even think about, well, how do I change this situation?
Yeah.
You know? And so like if you're in that type of situation, that's a really hard spot. And so I think that that's why people ultimately get super trapped in that. And that, like, it depends on everybody's individual circumstances and risk tolerance. Because I think at the end of the day, yeah, if you've got a mortgage and a family to support, you need to think
Yeah.
really, really hard about, well, what things can I, you know, how kind of stable are my foundations and how much time can I give myself, I guess, like how much risk can I absorb? You know, do I quit my job and give myself a month or like whatever it works out to be? But I think,
Hmm.
you know, if you're not that hard up against it and you've got a job that gives you some free time and supports your lifestyle, I think there's opportunities like the stuff that we're talking about with online stuff. I think, you know, if you can,
Right.
you don't have to go. I think people forget that it seems risky when you look at what everyone else is doing online. It feels risky to think about, you know, there's this to look at what everyone else is doing and think far out, like that'd be like, how do I do that? As opposed to what is it that I already know? Like, what are the things that I know how to do in my 9 to 5? What skills do I already have?
Yeah.
And how can I kind of bring that into the online space? I think that's sort of the first lens that I would look through rather than jumping all the way in and being like, all right, you know, my 9 to 5 is some sort of cushy admin job and I'm seeing all these guys on X. I want to go and do exactly what they're doing, which is not related in any way to the skills
Hmm.
that you already have. Um, so I think that would be my advice there. And like that kind of ties into what I see with a bunch of guys, particularly on X, who sort of are angling towards this idea of building a personal brand, um, and they focus really heavily on growing the audience as
Yeah.
opposed to actually taking something, however small, that you already know how to do. So whether that's a skill or something that you do in your day job, and then
Hmm.
building your audience around that rather than
Yeah.
just building the audience for the sake of building your audience. Because I think that that's unsustainable. If you're trying to, yeah, if you're trying to just grow a huge audience for the sake of it, and then, you know, try and monetize it later with something that you don't even know what it is yet, I think it's much easier to just look at your current situation, whether you're in your job or in your previous skills or whatever it is you know how to do, and figure out, how do I find people that this, you know, that this can help people, right? Like this thing that I know
Yeah.
how to do, how do I find
Hmm.
people that would be useful to? And there's no question
Interesting.
that the internet is like the best place to, like, you know, I'm talking with you on the other side of the world, and
Yeah.
like you can find
100%.
you can find anyone online. So I think the question is, like, if you are in that situation where you kind of feel like you've got those golden handcuffs on, it's really easy to fall into the trap of thinking, well, I don't know how to do what these guys online are doing. And the reality is, it's
Right.
not, you don't have to do what they're doing. You just think about what you do have already. And
Yeah.
then the internet is just a mechanism by which you can find people that would be useful for. Um,
Right. This
yeah.
idea of, I mean, it seems so, it can feel overwhelming, right? Moving into transitioning and kind of showing off one of your sites. I mean, this stuff's beautiful, dude. I mean, you got like lightning bolts going on back in it. All of your stuff's very visually pleasing. Like, how do
Yeah.
you like learn how to do all of this or like create it? Are there certain applications that you love, or like how did you go about teaching yourself this, or like how did you learn to create these
Um,
types of products?
to be honest, dude, that's actually super simple. Like that what you're looking there on the screen, that's actually just a Gumroad page. So anyone can go to Gumroad, um, and set one of these things up. But in terms of like the aesthetics of it, I mean, yeah, if you go to Gumroad,
Yeah,
you can
don't they
set
just
up.
take a percentage of your money or something when you sell?
They
Or
do, dude. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you're at. So like, I've got some one-on-one clients that are doing, like, I got guys that are doing. I work with a guy that does like $400,000 a week, dude. And
Damn.
like when you're making that kind of money, Gumroad is definitely not for you. So like if you're,
Right.
because like what you're talking about is that 10% flat rate there. So they take that off the top. So and so what you got to also remember is that because they process payments through Stripe, also take I think it's 2.9%. So realistically, you use something like this, you're losing from the get-go out of the gate, you're going to lose like 13% of your sale just to be able to post it there. But the reason I think Gumroad is really, really good for people that are just getting started with, like, whether it's a product or a service or a newsletter or anything like that, is because processing payments online is really, really risky, dude. Like, people don't understand the risk that's involved with this. And so I kind of have a bit of intimate knowledge of this because I worked with some big banks when I was working as a lawyer. So just to backtrack for a second, so Stripe, right? We all know what Stripe is. Stripe is super, super efficient, and it's really great for online entrepreneurs to take payments online.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to set up. So you can go and get a Stripe account, in 30 seconds, go and set it up. So the thing with Stripe is that they've back-ended all of the risk. So if you were to go to your bank and try to set up an online payment processor, so say you've got an online business and you want to sell your stuff and you want to be able to process a credit card payment from someone on the other side of the world.
Right.
If you went to your bank and were like, I want to set up an online payment processor, your bank front loads the risk. So what they do is they will ask you for like 6 months of your business history so that they can assess you whether or not you're a risk for their payment processor. Because what happens is when you take payments online, there's a huge, huge risk with what's called as card not present. So card not present transactions is basically where, if I'm buying your thing, you don't actually have my physical credit card. You're relying on me to input it into your system. And I could have a stolen credit card. It could be fraudulent. It could be anything. Okay. So the thing is, when I buy your thing, the bank pays you, and then the bank goes to me and tries to get the funds off me. So the bank has all of the risk. And so basically, there's this huge risk of fraudulent credit cards, chargebacks, all that kind of stuff. So long story short, if you go to a bank, they're going to want to see your business history for 6 months at least, so they can ascertain, well, are you a legitimate business and you have legitimate customers that pay you legitimate money because they're taking on all that risk. What happens when you go to Stripe will give you a processor straight away, but the minute someone gives you a fraudulent credit card, or there's a credit card bounces, or someone wants a refund or a chargeback, Stripe will basically shut your account off, and they hold all your funds.
Damn.
It's super risky. And so if you're starting out with an online business and you're just getting started, one of the biggest things that happens is, the thing that Stripe doesn't like particularly is like irregular payments. So if you're just starting a business and you might get one customer 1 week, and then maybe it's 2 or 3 weeks until you get another client, and then all of a sudden in another week you get 5 clients in 5 days, Stripe's going to flag that as like, well, this is irregular, and they'll put a hold on all your funds. So this is what's called payment processor risk. But when it comes, so the benefit of something like Gumroad, though, is Gumroad will process the payments for you through Stripe. So they take all of that risk, which means that if you're just starting out, it doesn't matter if you get 1 sale a week and then you get 3 the next week and then you get none for a month and then you get 5 all of a sudden. Gumroad doesn't care about that because they know that online, guys that are just starting out online, it's going to be irregular. Like you don't have a regular source of business yet.
Totally.
But they charge you 10% for that risk. So that's what the 10% is. So Gumroad have the relationship with Stripe, and because they're a big company, they can negotiate with Stripe. And so as the creator or as the small business owner, all of that risk is handballed onto Gumroad, but they charge you 10% for it, basically, which is why if you're a really mid-size, if you're doing a lot of money, 10% is a lot. But if you're just starting out, I think that's a price worth paying so that you don't have to deal with the headache of Stripe yourself. Because believe me, I've worked with a ton of guys who, coaching clients. So coaching is a good example because the thing that you put up of mine, that's a really low ticket offer. But a lot of coaches, their coaching packages are, in the thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
If you have a few clients that are on, a couple of grand a month, all of a sudden you could have a heap of money tied up in Stripe, and they can just cut you off and hold your money indefinitely.
Yeah.
All it takes is one client to want a refund and a chargeback, and Stripe will cut you off. So I think that, and I've seen this, dude. I've seen people with like 100 grand stuck in Stripe that they can't get.
Damn.
Yeah, and this happens way more frequently than you think. People don't want to talk about it. But yeah, any kind of online business, when you're first starting out, payment processing is a huge risk that most people don't know about. But something like Gumroad, I think it's worth the 10% when you're starting out to not have to deal with that risk.
Totally.
Like just get your business up and going. Get it to that point where it's reliable and it's recurring, and you have a good idea about what you can rely on, like what your inputs and your outputs are, and how your lead generation is, all that stuff. So you can kind of forecast your business into the future, and then think about jumping onto another platform where perhaps you deal with Stripe more directly, and you don't have to worry about that 10% fee. But yeah, that would be my advice. Is if you're just starting out, I think the 10% is definitely worth it. But to your point, it is a lot. Like it's a big chunk of your sale. So
I never knew what that, I have a couple of my clients who are using it as well. And I thought it was just like a marketing ploy to get people to not have to put money up front. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to pay this thing until it pays me, per se, versus, some of the other ones that we use. Like I've used ClickFunnels, before.
Yeah, I've used ClickFunnels,
and a few other ones that, and they were just like wanting money up front. So I didn't know if it was some type of play under that. But
the thing with ClickFunnels, like that's a good example. Is like, ClickFunnels is like, it's a monthly fee, right? It's like it's a SaaS service as a
it's like
fee.
$100-$200 a month, depending on if you get regular or pro or.
And I think they use, like, you can put Stripe and PayPal and stuff to process.
Yeah, you can embed. Other,
but it's still your Stripe account, though, right? Like it's still your.
Yeah, you're just linking it up. Yep.
Exactly.
Like whether it's your email or your payment or whatever, you're just embedding it in.
Exactly. There. So it's still, the risk is still on the entrepreneur there. So like if you get a bunch of people whose credit cards charge back, who go through your ClickFunnels and then they go through your Stripe widget and then it bounces on the credit card, Stripe are going to flag you straight away. So it's just my thing. I think once you're up and running and you've got a reliable income stream, like a reliable revenue that you can point to, and Stripe kind of gets used to going, well, this guy's revenue is consistent. I think that's when you can think about like going to Stripe directly. And there are a bunch of platforms that do that, like ClickFunnels and Shopify, heaps of stuff, right? But I think when you're first starting out and you really don't know how reliable your revenue is going to be, something like Gumroad is really, really useful. And it's super easy to get started. Like that thing that you showed, I mean, you can make it aesthetically pretty good. It's a good sales page. All of the payment processing is taken care of. I like it for starting up guys. And the reason I use it in particular is the ease, but also because a lot of the guys that I'm working with now are like new guys, and I don't like talking about stuff that I'm not doing myself. So it really helps if I'm recommending you guys to use Gumroad, it really helps that I'm using it as well, because I know how to use it.
Totally.
But yeah,
you have under here for this. I want to talk about how you've gotten. Where do you create all these models for a lot of your products and stuff? That I've been looking at a lot of James's stuff, using a lot of your stuff to kind of just reach out and connect and network with people to try and get more podcasts or just build. And you do a really good job of like turning ideas into models. And
Yeah.
I was curious how you do this. Is there applications that you like using, or how do you get so much creativity out of this stuff?
Dude, I'm huge on models, dude. I think so. There's a few parts of your question that I'll come back to why I think models are awesome in a second. So the first part of your question in terms of applications, not really, dude. This is my iPad, and I just draw on my iPad. So I use an app called I've forgotten what it's called. It's called oh shit. I'll get back to you what it's called. It's just a drawing app, dude, and it's on the iPad here. And so all I do is like, I don't know if you can see that, but I just draw on
Yeah.
that with my Apple Pen, and I just screen record this, and then you can, something like even if you're on Zoom or whatever, you can just screen share your iPad, and then you can draw, and people can see you drawing. But it's super easy, dude. I just use the iPad
I need
drawing
to
app,
get
and you don't.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so powerful, especially if you want to use like something to demonstrate what you do, which I think in your case, like for coaches and guys that are like in that coaching space where really like all of your value is tied to, I mean, it's tied to getting people to change, right? You want to move people
Right.
from point A to point B. It's about
Transformation sales. Yeah.
transforming people's life, which is about movement and about change. And I think that the way, you can tell people with words, how their life's going to change, or you can show them, right? Like I think
Mm-hmm.
if people can see themselves in what you're talking about, that's the first
Yeah.
step to change, right? And so when it comes to like models and turning ideas into models, I think it's the most powerful way for people to understand how what you're talking about changes over time and can transform their life. Because you can, in a visual model, people can look into it, and
Mm-hmm.
they can see all the parts, and they can see how, like, if you present it in the right way and you kind of choreograph the way you build out the model, people can see themselves and how they move through the model.
Yeah.
And so what it's really about is like about creating like a context for what you're saying. So like you could
Mm-hmm.
just tell people how you could change their lives, or you could draw a model, and then they can see the context and they can see themselves in it. And what's important, I think, when it comes to transforming lives and visual models is when someone can look into a model and you can kind of put your content into that model, people can look into it, they can see themselves, but importantly, they can see all the bits that they're missing in their life, right? So you can put your content in it, and people can look around and go, oh, I understand that bit, but I can see in the model this bit, and they can see what's missing. And I think that's like the first step in like change management, is like people need to be able to see themselves in it and then see what's missing, and then they lean into you because you're the one that's building the model and building the context. They go, oh, I can see that I don't have that part or that part. So they lean into you as the one who's going to help them get that part, or provide the implementation on how to do that thing. So yeah, dude, I'm huge on visual models, primarily for that reason, is that it's just the easiest way for people to see themselves in what you're doing, which I think for
Yeah.
a coach is like, that's the whole game, right? If
Right.
people want to see themselves in your world, and because people don't buy coaching, dude, people buy the coach. Like everyone has their own way of coaching, but at the end of the day, people are going to buy into what you're doing because they like you and they want to be coached by you
100%.
and the way that you do things, whether that's because of the way you present what you do or the way that you've done it with yourself. So like, obviously a lot of coaches get into coaching because they changed their own lives first, and now they want to
100%.
help people do that. So like,
Mhm.
but whichever way you look at it, like people aren't buying, you know, the coaching. They're not buying the weekly coaching call. They're not buying the worksheets or the whatever. They're buying the coach, right?
Yeah.
And so like a huge part of that is being able to capture like complex ideas. Like you could spend hours telling people what you do, or you could just capture it in a simple model so people can quickly and easily see themselves in it and go, yep,
Yeah.
that makes sense. How do I, where do I sign up? Like how do I work with you to do the thing that you're showing me in this diagram.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
being able to present this, and also, so we got connected by, and you had reached out to me originally. I think this is one of my areas that I want to grow, and I'm sure so many people who listen, they want to put themselves out there more. Are you just reaching out and prospecting to people and finding clients? Does that bother you? Is this a muscle that you built over time, or what's some practical stuff you can talk about that?
To be honest, so it never really bothered me personally, but I do speak to a lot of people that are bothered by the idea of outreach. But
Yeah,
I personally think it's the best, the fastest, and like the feedback loop is so quick, particularly on something like X. I think it's just the easiest way to quickly grow your network, and find out what people need. Like that's ultimately at the end of the day, that's what it is. And like the thing is, like I remember I reached out to you because I saw one of your videos on X, and like yeah, I think so. The reason I think people shouldn't be afraid of outreach, I actually think that outreach is the most important part, particularly when you're starting out, as opposed to like a lot of people fixate on the content.
interesting.
So, because what I think happens is, I think if you reach out to someone, with a cold DM, the first thing they're going to do before they even reply to you is they're going to go look at your profile. They're going
Yeah,
to go look at your
100%.
content, right? So if I reach out, if you reach out to someone and they don't know who you are, first thing they're going to do is go on your profile and look at one of your videos and go, I can see this guy on my screen. I can see that he's a real person. He knows what he's talking about. Like the number of followers you have is irrelevant. All those things, audience, it's irrelevant. What they're going to do is they're going to look at your content as like a reference check. And so this is why I think you're in a really unique position, because you do videos so well that people can instantly see you. They can watch a bit of your video and go, oh, this is a real guy. He knows what he's talking about. He's really accessible. He's really authentic. And then what are they going to do? They're going to reply to your DM. So I think in terms of like, if you're worried about DMs, like I think so many people are put off because there are so many people that do DMs the wrong way, like outreach the wrong way. Like it's not about
100%.
pitching someone cold straight with your first message. Like obviously the minute like everyone sees these dude, like my inbox is full of these guys. It's just like the first thing is just like an automated pitch. It's like, delete, right?
Right.
It's so easy to reach out to someone. And this is what I teach my guys is like, all you have to do is like, you don't have to do much. Like you can go on their profile, look a bit, like their content, maybe comment on it, and then send them a DM. And like there's nothing to be afraid of there. And I think that like business happens in conversations, right? And you don't need to hard sell anyone. You just need to get into a conversation with someone, find out what their goals are, like what are they actually trying to do, where are they at now. So all of a sudden you've got, okay, well, they're trying to be here, but they're currently here. There's a gap there. And then ask them, like, what do you think's getting in the way? Like, it's just a conversation that you would have with a person face to face and go, what do you think's stopping you? What's getting in the way? What's slowing you down? And then all of a sudden they've basically told you their buying criteria. Like as a coach, they've told you what it is that they're struggling with. And most importantly, what they think they need to close that gap.
Yeah.
And then you're in a conversation and you can just be like, dude, do you want some help with that? And then and then you're off to the races. And then like, you don't have to offer a paid coaching gig right there, but you just like, give some value, show how you can help them, send them free stuff. And then, you do that with enough people, you're not selling anyone, you're just offering to help people. And then it just becomes a volume game. You do that with enough people, you're going to get some clients eventually. Like
totally.
So I think that like outreach is like the most powerful tool there is, because the other aspect of that is like, even if you don't get a client out of it, like I said, the first thing someone's going to do when you cold DM them is they're going to look at your stuff. So you're getting eyeballs on your content. And then if they like it, they're going to like it. Maybe they follow you. Maybe you don't get a
Yeah.
sale, but you've got a follower. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so it's also the best way to grow your audience. I mean, there are faster ways to grow your audience for sure, but I think that you end up building like a useless audience that way. I think the key is like, if you're going to do outreach, you want to make sure that you're targeting the right people. So that's like the most important thing, is like, you actually want to look at that person's profile and look at their content first and be like, well, you know, is this someone that I could actually help? So like, I think there's two parts to it. There's like outreach for networking's sake, which is like kind of like what we've been doing. And then there's outreach where you're like, okay, this is someone that I could definitely help. And so you've got more of a sales bent to it. So you want to be, when you're talking to people that you genuinely think that you can help, you want to kind of steer a bit more clear of the like friendly, you know, friendly, just kind of small talk, and kind of steer the conversation towards like, well, what is it that you need? What do you think is getting in the way? And like, here's how I can help you, as opposed to like the other one, which is like just building networks and building and friendships and things online. But I think at the end of the day, it's just about having conversations with people. It's not about hard selling people. And if you do it the right way, you target the right people, find people that you can help, have a conversation with them, and then offer to help them. Like, that's literally what I think it is. And that's why I like X, because you can send so many DMs on X. Like, a lot of other platforms have limits, dude. Like, you just can't do that on any other platform. So yeah, and yeah, you just have to be smart about how you do it, and think about the mechanics of it a little bit, about what happens when someone sees a cold DM, and then just talk to people. You don't need. I
really like this. I like this idea. It kind of just takes, like, I can feel like the weight kind of like coming off when you talk about you're just trying to help people. You know, I'm not trying to hard sell anybody. It's like, this is what I have. These are your channel, and people just want to be heard and complimented. I know, like, when you were reaching out to me initially, you know, you gave me a compliment. You're saying, hey, this is like kind of checking out what I was doing. And then we were going back and forth, having conversations like normal human beings. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I want to learn more from you, talk to you.
That's all it is, my man. Like, you just be genuine and be authentic. And like, you know, you could end up on a podcast like with someone like this, or it could go nowhere, but it doesn't matter. I think the idea is you're just, trying to open a genuine conversation and be genuinely like interested in people. Like, if you're going to do cold outreach, like, at least make the effort to like look at someone's content, like it, compliment them on it, and then strike up a conversation. Like, it's just not that hard. I think the thing with coaches is there are so many coaches out there that have so much to offer people. Like, they really know how to change people's lives. They're just not good at marketing themselves.
Right.
Like, because I think we're kind of coming out of an era online where, you know, there's just so many people that are like great marketers, but shitty coaches. Like, they market themselves as a coach, but it's like, they're not really a great coach. They're just really good at marketing. And then they tag some like shitty coaching product onto the back of that. Whereas I think the flip side of that is there are so many great coaches that have a lot to offer people and can really help people. They just don't know how to put themselves out there, or how to find people, like how to market, but how to like sell themselves. And at the end of the day, it's like, as a coach, that's your gig. Like, you know how to help people. So all you have to do is just talk to people and find out what they need, and then help them. It's not like, you don't have to be a sales guru. In fact, you don't want to do like any hard selling at all, really. It's just like, just help people. And that's why, I think there's definitely a lot of coaches out there that feel that, like, they know they can help people, but they just feel a bit icky about sales and marketing.
Totally. I think it's so easy to fall into. I mean, I'm a big believer, nobody's good at anything they don't do all the time. And if you're spending all your time coaching, reading these self-help books, creating these exercises, and you're scared of selling and you're not doing any of it, and it's like, I'm petrified, and I'm like, I'm not good at this. I don't know how. I haven't. It's crazy to me how like Like, for example, I mean, as you can see, 430, this is episode 430 of this bad boy.
430,
And I
yeah.
do a lot more of the content creation and a lot less of like the outreach. So maybe selfishly, folks, maybe I'm asking for my own advice. So should kind of looking at my content, do you think I should make less content or just like spending a lot more hours on like the outreach, or like how many hours a day should I be putting into this, or any advice for me?
Honestly, I think whatever number is sustainable for you. So if I was to tell you, like, because my numbers are going to be different to your numbers, as in, like,
Yeah,
some
great
people,
answer. Yeah, totally.
because, like, one of the things is, like, your content, you obviously put a lot of time and effort into your content. And I think that that's what makes you unique and makes you stand out, particularly on a platform like X. Like, not many people are doing video on X, dude. Like,
Hmm.
it's really easy to get sucked into thinking everyone on X is doing really well, but it's really easy to hide behind a profile picture and, some words. There's not
Right.
many people that are actually putting videos out, putting their face out there, talking into, like, and it can feel like talking into the void. Like, you're just making these things. But to your
Yeah.
point, and but my point is, like, that's your advantage. So don't stop doing that. And so my point is, like, if that takes you however many hours a day it takes you to, think of the stuff, film it, edit it, whatever you're doing, put it out there. Like, you need to work in around that. So, like, and what's sustainable? Like, if I was to tell you, like, oh yeah, I do outreach for 3 hours a day. If that's not, you could try that for a week, but it might not be sustainable. Like, it's got to be whatever it is that's going to work for you. And I'm a huge believer in, like, the path of least resistance. So, like,
Interesting.
you're always going to revert back to the path of least resistance. So you can force something with willpower for a little while,
Hmm.
but at the end of the day, if you hate doing it and it's not your thing, you're not going to last. So,
Yeah.
like, having said that, I think that outreach is really important, but how much outreach, how you do it, is all kind of unique to the person. And I think, like, obviously the end goal is to not have to do much outreach at all, right? Like, once your audience is big enough and
Yeah.
all you have to do is post your podcast, post your videos, and you'll get reliable inbound. Like,
Yeah.
that's the goal. Like, that's the
Right.
thing. But we all have to start somewhere, right? Like, that's,
Hmm.
like, I think people fall into a trap of thinking, oh, if I just make content, people are going to come to me. Well, no, dude. Like, that's what happens once you've got a big brand.
Yeah.
Um, that's ideal, is where, yeah, you don't have to do any outreach at all. But in the early days, you definitely need to force that. You need to force that kind of those conversations. So at the end of the day, it's like it's content and it's conversations, and it's like, in terms of, like, how you break down your day, is
Hmm.
kind of like, well, what's the path of least resistance? Like, what's the easiest way for me to have the most number of conversations as possible, and then, as
Hmm.
whilst making sure that I'm doing the content the way that works the best for me. And I think, like, I would be so hesitant for someone like you to eat into the time that it takes you to make your content, because that's what is, like, that's your unfair advantage at the moment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but having said that, I think everyone should be doing some level of outreach daily. It's just about, like,
Right.
how you want to do it. And then
Okay.
there are all different ways that you can do that. So, like, one of the big things that I'm doing at the moment is, like, I think that I think that you can automate the outreach, but then you have to manually have the conversation. And
Interesting.
ways to do that. So, like, because a lot of people that I like, a lot of guys that I work with, they get all excited about doing heaps of outreach, and they spend, like, hours a day doing the initial reach out. So, like, liking the content, complimenting, sending the message, and then doing
Hmm.
that for, 50 accounts a day.
Damn.
And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you've spent your whole day doing the reach out. And then when some of those people start replying,
Hmm.
you don't get to
Just
it till the
that.
next day. And then, yeah,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're, like, spending all your time the next day replying to the people instead of doing the outreach for the next bunch of 50 people. Like, it needs to be sustainable. So my thing is, like, instead of burning all your time on the outreach, is you can automate that part. And there are some really good tools to do that, like some really good, like, AI tools. And what you do is you automate the outreach, but you have the conversation. So the minute someone replies, now you're in it. You don't want to have your bot talking to someone. You want to be talking to the person. But so basically you can spend all of your hours actually in conversation with people who have replied to you. Because when you start doing this with volume at the start, you're not going to get a response from everyone. In fact, you're not going to get a response from the majority of people. So you want to make sure that you're not burning all your time on outreach to people that are never going to respond to you.
Totally.
Right? You want to get the robot to do the outreach, and then you talk to the people that reply, because those are the people that matter. The people that reply are the ones that matter. And so there's a ton of things there. Like I can share with the audience if you want, like how I do that. But that was the big concept. Is like the first thing is it's got to be sustainable. So what do as much or as little that works with you. Think about what your unfair advantage already is, and don't screw that up. So make sure that you're always spending the necessary time on doing what it is that makes you and your thing great. But you got to balance that as well with like getting, like you said, like earlier, where you said, you get good at things that you do often, something like that. Like you don't get good at something unless you spend a lot of time doing it. So like people aren't naturally just gifted enough to just, jump on camera and do the thing, right? Like you've done 430 episodes to get to where you are. And so I don't want people to think for a second that like, oh, my thing is whatever, jumping on camera, I'm just going to do that and it's easy. It's like there is an element of like you're going to suck at the start, and that's okay. And you just need to keep doing it so that you get better. So there is an element of like, yes, the path of least resistance, but you've got to balance that with like, well, I want to actually get better at the thing. So I need to put the effort in and push through those early days when I'm not good at it.
I mean, the early days, man. Right. It doesn't seem like there's anybody escapes with no scars or wounds along the way. I know it's easy to get caught up in just beautiful marketing and think like, oh, I just do this simple thing and then it makes a buku bucks, and then I can go visit James in Australia and we're retired by 30 or whatever the numbers that you see. Man. Right. So kind of putting yourself out there, staying consistent, but having something that allows you to build up to it so we don't just run into a wall and knock ourselves out. I do really like that slow, gradual build up. The idea of maybe the power of one. If you're having a really hard time doing anything, just starting with one a day, and just kind of getting that building that muscle up, or hiring a coach who's specific, who does that, specifically getting some help. I know it helped me a lot when someone who's helped build my last funnel. I can share it over here with you guys.
Pull it up.
So I had, so that's the class 1 PLP. So I had someone build this for me. Shout out to Jocelyn and her marketing company. So building me this funnel, and then we were both like, hey, we need to be doing more outreach, and we're meeting up and we're doing outreach together. So maybe even you find like other people who you can partner up with, you can hang out with, to just kind of make it more doable. I know with one of my clients, we were kind of just chatting around for a bit and kind of brainstorming ideas, and they were screen sharing, and we're like, oh, maybe we could say this to that person or this to. It seems, I know I personally always do well when I'm not alone and surrounded by other people.
Oh man, this is a particular thing of mine. I've seen coaching done really well and coaching done really poorly. And I think almost always the best coaching that I've ever seen has been coaching that builds communities, so that clients learn from one another as well as the coach. So that you learn from your community, like whether it's coaching clients or whether it's on X or whatever. I think you get so much more out of, joining a community where you can see that like, oh, there are people that are at the same place where I am, like people that I can run alongside, and then you go, well, there's people that are far ahead of me enough that they can like motivate me to do better, and then there's always people that are further behind than where you are, and those often one of the things that I think people forget is that when like we need to be reminded of stuff more than we need to be taught. And so like a lot of advanced guys, the more you grow and the more kind of advanced you get, there's always like added layers of complexity. But every now and then advanced people need to be reminded of the simple fundamentals that got them there. And so there's always a place for advanced people in communities where there's people that are behind them, because when you've got someone who's way behind where you're at, they will remind you of the fundamentals often. And like, they'll remind you of like, well, when you're starting out, it's like, just do the simple things like that we've been talking about here. Like just start, just get better. Like just put in the, day by day, let it compound. And often when you're more advanced, you forget the simple things because you've got all of this kind of like complexity kind of clouding your mind. And so that's why I think communities are great, because it doesn't matter if you're advanced, in the middle, or just starting out. There's all levels of people around you and they help you in all different ways. And so like the best coaching that I've seen has been like, in that sense, like group coaching and coaching communities, because, people join for the content and they win because of the coaching, but they stay because of the community. Like, that's what I've really noticed. And so like, obviously that helps the coach because you want to keep your clients as long as possible, but it helps the clients because they keep winning and they stay interested. Like the thing that we all know as coaches, like the thing that people aren't successful because they don't know what to do, or like people end up just giving up because of a number of different reasons. And so like anything you can do to keep people interested, keep people motivated, and like a huge part of that is like working with people rather than like on your own, And like, coaching communities that have all levels of people, I think it's just it's the best way for people to continually win.
That's so well said. It was, they come for the content, they win from the coaching, and they stay for the community.
Yeah, they join the coaching because of your content. So they come for the content, they win because of your coaching, and they stay because of your community. But yeah, I think like but just to go back to your other point with your funnel as well, I think that like it's a really important point for, if there is stuff that you need to be diligent and intentional with the stuff that you do decide you want to put your effort into. So like for me, and probably for you, I would look at I look at a lot of the tech stuff, and I'm like, you know what, I could probably learn that. Like if I put the effort into it, I could do it, but I don't want to. It's not where I see myself going. So I'm going to get help with that thing. And this is where coaches come in. It's like I'm big on like, and I'm aware that, not everyone can afford certain things, but it's like, if you can buy somebody else's experience, somebody else's mistakes, and fast track your own growth, you should absolutely invest in yourself and do that. And that's where something like, if you could spend months trying to figure out how to build your own funnel, and it would be shitter than someone who's done it millions of times.
Right.
Just pay that person, get it done, and all of a sudden you're like, great, now that's done. But you got to, like I said, you got to balance that with the things like you can't outsource authenticity. So if you want to get better at your content, get better at your videos, get better at your coaching, get better at the way you communicate with people, you can't outsource that. You just have to do that, and you have to like put in the hard yards. But yeah, I think being intentional with what you want to do and what bits you can just like, I can buy somebody else's expertise on that thing and accelerate faster with that person than I ever could on my own.
It's interesting to me how in different industries, and I'm sure for different people, like we're okay with getting help in some regards, but not getting help in others. So me and my girlfriend, we own a number of rental properties, and and we're not scared to like ask for help. I had a hoarder at one of my rentals, or
Oh
there was
no, yeah, that, yeah.
like
I've been there
flooding
now. I've
and
seen that before,
drains.
man.
Yeah,
Horrible.
the like horror stories, and not scared to like get help with that. And I freely admit I don't know what the hell I'm doing all the time. But when it comes to like my coaching company, for the longest time, I was so hesitant on reaching out and like getting help for people, and it felt like I was just in tutorial hell, banging my head
Yeah,
off the
yeah, yeah.
laptop. It's I find that interesting. I don't know if you see that in other people, and like what we got to do to remind ourselves like it's okay, like no man is an island, like it's definitely okay to get help and support along the way.
Yeah, I think like it's really useful to like you've got to encourage people with things like I mean like I think it's one of the great kind of mindsets for me is like you can do like anyone you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. And so it's important that you pick the things that yeah, you get really good at picking the things that you want to do and everything
Mhm.
else is like if someone else has done it or if people can help you, go like do that as quickly as you can. Like just get
Mhm.
as much help as you can. Because yeah, there's so many instances where people just are so reluctant to ask for help. And I think entrepreneurs are like particularly bad at this because like the nature of the gig is you kind of have to wear all the different hats all the
Yeah.
time when you're starting out. Like I'm not saying for a second that when you first start out you should go and drop all this money on like tech and coaching and all that stuff. Like 100% when you're starting out, you should do it all your own on your own. But I think that it's important to realize that you're going to be crap at most of it, and that's all right.
Yeah.
But it's about figuring out what bits you really like doing, what bits you're good at, what you're crap at, and you're not willing to invest years to learn that thing. But
Mhm.
the only way you get to that point is by actually trying all the stuff. Um, and like, yeah, I think the biggest mistake you can make when you're starting out is by dropping money all over the place on stuff that you don't even know if you need or you want or like and at the end of the day feel like particularly a big one that I see all the time is people paying for ads, not so much on Twitter, but back in the day when I was working with quite a few coaches on Facebook, and Facebook ads were huge, and I was like, dude, if you
Mhm.
can't if your content doesn't hit organically, you're just amplifying something that's crap. But
Right.
everybody seemed to think that like, oh, I gotta, all I need is to pay for ads and get more eyeballs. And it's like, nah, dude, like you just need to get better at your core stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But
It's
but yeah, I
interesting.
think that like, yeah, not asking for help is a huge, I guess, weakness that a lot of entrepreneurs suffer from because and let's not forget, a lot of people are really capable at a lot of things. And so
Mhm.
there is that trap of like feeling like because you could do everything really well that you should do everything really well, and it's like no, no,
Yeah.
no, like that's just like a recipe for stress and a recipe for like not doing anything well, doing everything half-assed rather than doing one or two things really well.
I think it's so difficult to find the balance of we need to push ourselves and be immersed enough to where we know who to hire or we know who to help, like we
Oh,
like trying
absolutely.
something, and it sucks and it's painful, but also like having that base knowledge so I'm not like getting ripped off, or I know the right questions, because a lot of people can only create with what you give them. I know with one of my funnels, they were like, "What are your testimonials? Like what?
Yeah,
Like transformations? What are you have professional photos? Do you have video content?" And like they can only do as good as like what you feed into it.
yeah,
So you're never like out of the process, right? But so hard to know
yeah,
when to keep plowing forward versus like asking for help. You know?
yeah, and like everyone's got a different perspective on that. I totally agree, dude. I think that you shouldn't be hiring help until you've done the stuff yourself, and so you have a baseline level of understanding with first of all, the specific things that you need help with so that you can make sure that you're hiring the right people, but also to make sure that you're getting the right people into your organization that are a good fit with you, you know. But also like, yeah, there's just so much stuff that you don't know that you don't know. And so the only
Totally.
way, yeah, and like the only way to to kind of uncover more of that stuff is you've just got to do the stuff yourself. And like, yeah, some people there's so many different approaches to this. Like some people just think that like you can do everything yourself and build like, you know, like someone like, you know, Alex Hormozy, for example. He's just like, you know,
Totally.
you can get to $1 million a year on your own doing everything. And I do believe that that's true, but I don't think there are many people that can do that. Like I think that lots of people are capable, but I don't think they would actually do what it takes. So like there's a difference between, yes, you could do it, but are you willing to do the things that Alex Hormozy was willing to do? And people forget this. So
Yeah.
like it comes back to our conversation before about where I was like, what's going to be the most sustainable thing for you? Because like I guarantee, like, yeah, you could build $1 million a year business on your own if you were prepared to spend 8 hours a day outreaching to people. Like, you know, and then so you spend your whole day outreaching and then you spend 2 hours a day on client, like on the delivery as well. Like trying to
Yeah.
do all of that on your own, yes, it's possible, but like, is it sustainable? I don't know. For some people, it might be, but like, that's the question that everyone has to answer for themselves. So like, where that point is where you ask for help and where the point is where you just keep pushing is definitely different for each person, but there's obviously a bunch of core skills that I think everybody, if you're going to make it, you need to really have put the hours into learning yourself.
Yeah.
But
Those, I mean, like shout out to Alex Ramosi, that, yeah, sleeping on gym floors, working from the second his eyeballs open up till he blacks out the next day, and then doing it
yeah,
again, like year after year. Yeah. I guess for the other day, I was sitting in our backyard and I was petting the dog. I was listening to my girlfriend talk, and we're hanging out. And I'm only 29, so like running. I just got done with a workout, and I'm enjoying outside. And part of me is like, because I want to really get wealthy, but also I'm not willing to completely sacrifice my
yeah,
youth
absolutely.
and my time with
Yeah,
like my loved ones and stuff like that. I just don't think it's worth it. Am I
yeah,
going to
and
fall
that's,
short of being a multi-billionaire? Maybe,
I
but
mean,
yeah, I
well,
guess knowing what you want to give
that's the
up.
point, dude. Like, it's like, what are you optimizing for?
Right. What am I even working
And like,
for?
yeah, and like even that word that you said, like wealth, right? Like even that, it's important to be like, well, how do you define wealth? Because some people are going to be like, well, to me, wealth is like I got to be a billionaire. And it's like, okay, that's cool. If you want to optimize to be a billionaire, these are like comes back to the point that I said before. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything. And if you want
Yeah.
to optimize to be a billionaire, you're going to have to be okay with the fact that you're going to sacrifice lifestyle, relationships. Like that's just the reality of it. Like unless you are inheriting wealth, like or you know you come up with the next kind of $1 billion unicorn at some point, if you're optimizing for building $1 billion wealth portfolio, there's a bunch of things that come with that you need to be aware of. But if your definition of wealth is like, well, you know, I just want to underwrite my lifestyle, as in like I want to always be able to do whatever, the freedom to do whatever I want with who I want when I want. And then true wealth is like, well, how can I do that forever and never have to worry about money? For a lot of people, that's the definition of wealth. Like I love this idea of, yeah, underwriting um, lifestyle. It's like what sort of assets do I have to have that can support the lifestyle that I want? And then you optimize around that. But the idea is you're not sacrificing the lifestyle because that's the driving force behind the thing that's supporting it, right? Like
Wow. Yeah.
you know, there's so many things like that. And ultimately, for me, it sounds like we're very similar in that sense. Like for me, I define wealth from the perspective of like optionality, which is like you want to have enough that you can choose to do, like you have options. So you're never so hard up against it that you have to do something. It's always about like, how do I create that freedom where I can do what I want, when I want, with who I want? And that's just essentially, that's a lifestyle business. But yeah, I mean, different folks for different strokes, I guess. But like at the end of the day, I think it's just that self-reflective question of like, well, what do you really want and what are you actually optimizing for? And then being real about what it takes to do that. Because so many people are like, oh, I want to get, I want to get as rich as possible. And it's like, well, dude, for me, like getting rich is just a treadmill. It's like that rat race. Like it doesn't matter whether you're, doing a business or invest, like whatever it is, like being rich is a very different mindset to wealth. And then wealth has all the things that we've talked about. But it's like, if you just want to make money, bro, that's not for me,
Yeah, it's this like not being jealous of people, like when you're not willing to willing to live their life. I know I like Lex Friedman's content quite a bit.
Love him,
And
yeah.
he had Elon on, and he was just like, yeah, you wouldn't even want to be me, man. It's really not.
I saw that interview, bro. I saw that. Yeah.
And I was
Everyone
like, yeah,
thinks they want to be
that.
Elon.
I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah. Same thing with Hormozy. And he's the thing is, I feel like this is the message that he's open about it, but people don't really hear it. People don't hear it. And he's very intentional with it. But like, if you look at the way Hormozy operates, that like what you see on social media is pretty much what his life is. It's not like, I think people get trapped into this thing of thinking, well, I can do all the stuff that Hormozy is doing and travel the world, have all these, family and all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, bro. Like, and he's really open about this. Like, he has no hobbies. He literally works all day. His wife works in the same thing that he's working in, and she loves it as much as he does. So like, if you think that you can do the Hormozy thing on your own whilst having a relationship with someone who's not wanting to do the same thing,
impossible.
He doesn't have kids, doesn't like all those things, is like, you need to be real about that stuff. And like, I saw that interview with Elon and Lex, and I was like, dude, it's so like, everyone thinks they want to be Elon, but they don't want to do what Elon does. Like, they don't want that. Like, if people actually saw what he does, no one wants that. Like, well, some people might, but like, I think it's like, that's the veneer of social media that's so toxic and so kind of like pernicious, is that it's really easy to appear one way online and not really show the rest of it,
Totally.
But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like, it's just comes back to the point about, you just got to be real, super self-reflective on like, what is it that I want, and then actually go out and figure out what it really takes and what you really have to optimize for, and then go from there. But yeah, I social media is just like that, dude. Like, it's like, it's real, but it's fake. You know what I mean? Like, you never see the whole picture. Like, yeah, and it goes all the way the other way too, dude. There's so many guys out there on social media who make it look as if they've got this whole lifestyle business, and all they do is like, never work. It all just happens. They just sit there on their laptop, work for a few minutes a day, or once a week, or on a beach, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The reality is like, yeah, that's not the reality. And dude, I've worked with these guys. Like, I've worked with guys, like, it's really easy to show, to say to someone, oh, I'm making this much per month. It's like, yeah, but how much are you taking home? Like,
Totally.
That's what matters. Like, dude, like, this is not a joke. When I was ghostwriting for a guy on Twitter who I think he had 150,000 followers, and his niche was make money online. So like, he talked about how to, like, Money X, like how to make money online. And this was during a time, like, this was like during lockdowns when like crypto was pumping, and like there was like, Twitter back then was like a really different place to what it is now. But this guy had 150,000 followers, and he couldn't afford like $2,000 a month coaching. But his niche was like how to make money online. He wasn't making any money. He talked about making money, and he talked about all this stuff, but he actually himself didn't know how to do it. it's just like there's so many eye-opening things like that where you're just like, bro, like you just need to be, I think, just keep a level head and yeah, don't get sucked into what everyone else is doing. Really think about what you want and how to optimize for those things. But yeah, it's
nailing what you want. And I think this is a perfect segue. We're going to jump into some coaching exercises so you guys can get a bit to know James a little bit better as we get to the big board. As always, let me switch some things up. Okay. All right, we're going to be starting out with some powerful questions, my man. As soon as I kick this off real quick. All righty. So first question for you, James, is what is one thing that you love about yourself?
I think determination, like the trait of determination. Like I just won't stop until I get the thing done,
Sound like a lawyer in a past life.
How'd you know, bro? I think, I think there's obviously a huge negative side of that, but I think that it's a trait that I really do like. I really do like, because I think the more you go on in life, you see that a lot of people just don't have that.
Yeah, I would agree.
A lot of people just don't have the tenacity to just not stop. And almost anything you want in life, you'll get there if you just don't stop. The only way you don't get it is if you quit. But I'm not sure whether you can teach that to people, but it's something that I definitely have. And like I said, the negative of that is like, well, if not having an off switch can be really, really bad too. So
the work-life balance, it's so much like James was talking about earlier, this like you can do anything you want, you just can't do everything. Hence the money question. So what is your number one goal for 2024?
My number one goal is actually I want to buy a house from my parents and my partner's parents. So, yeah.
How much is what's an average home worth in your neighborhood? Is real estate super expensive? Is it cheap? Or
I would say it's expensive, bro. I think in this area, I think the mean house price in the area that we're living in is about 1.1, 1.3 million Australian dollars. Okay. Australian dollars. So I think that, you're looking at like maybe 850, 900 US dollars, something like that.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, like I was saying, we got rentals, and I absolutely love real estate. I definitely want to. My brother's renting this house out in California right now, out in Colorado. My apologies.
Yeah,
and he's running it. And I want to buy it so bad from the owner, but I need my my coaching company to continue to grow. But this segment's not about me; it's about James, folks. So keep it rocking.
I love real estate, man. Dude, I could talk to you about real estate all day. My mum is an architect and my dad is an engineer. And
really?
They run they run a family property development business. So, wow. And my mum's family was a huge construction, like her father ran a huge construction company here in Australia. Mm-hmm. So like there's like property, construction, real estate, it's kind of in my veins. And like, yeah, we've got a family property development, which I want to get more into, later on in life. But yeah, I could talk to you about real estate all day.
Damn, we're going to need to talk more about houses and buying them. Okay. Going down the list. So this is going to be part of a SWOT analysis. So we're going to take out a couple pieces for this: SWOTs, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We're going to focus just on the back end of this. What do you think is your biggest opportunity in 2024?
I think personal branding, honestly, like it sounds cliche, but I think building a brand online is a huge opportunity.
What's one step for you to get closer to building your brand? What's like an action item that you're trying to instill in yourself to build this brand?
Yeah, I want to create like daily content on Instagram. I think Instagram is an interesting platform. I think it's the best for personal branding. I think the time horizon is much longer. So like we were talking about before, X is great because the feedback is so quick and you can pump stuff out quickly. I
Uh-huh.
think so you can get a lot of traction quickly on X, but I think on Instagram you need to be thinking like 6 to 12 months minimum when it comes to building a brand. But I think once you've got a brand on a platform like Instagram, because it's so visual, like what I was telling you before about like your video content, I think when people can see you, they can see into your life, they can
Mhm.
see what makes you you and what you do. That's
Yeah.
like the essence of a personal brand. And I think that Instagram has a much higher ceiling for that, whereas Twitter is, it's obviously it's a micro blogging platform, and it's hard to sort of be as visual on X. But yeah, I think the
Yeah.
opportunity for branding is that longer time horizon on Instagram. So,
Yeah. I like that. I'm really trying to myself try and work on that, just getting more frequent on the posts. You can go live on Instagram now on multi-stream platforms, so be
yeah,
looking out for that. It's cool that they're
yeah.
finally jumping on board with it. Okay, next one is your threat. What do you think is your biggest threat going into 2024? What is your biggest threat?
Like on the back of what we were talking about, I think like trying to do too many things, like
Mm.
I guess you could distill that into like a lack of focus, or not focusing on one thing, you know.
So where do you want your focus to be? Would it be with the brand? Is there anything that you can think of that you want to like let go of?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely I'm winding down a lot of my like one-on-one clients. So like it's a huge time sink. Like I love working with those guys, but I want to focus. It sounds cliche, but I want to help more people. So like I want to, you would know, like working one-on-one with people, it's like really rewarding working
Oh,
with a tight group of people, but
mhm.
you are really limited in how many people you can help one-on-one. Whereas
Yeah.
I think that with a personal brand, there are so many people out there that you can reach, um, and not in a paid way. Like I think one of
Mhm.
the big things about, particularly for coaches, is like your marketing, and by marketing I mean like the content that you put out as a personal brand, that can help thousands and thousands. That'll help more people than your coaching ever will.
Yeah.
Like people that look to you for inspiration, or like whatever it is. I think like you've got to look at personal branding as like not as a monetization thing, but as like an impact thing. So
Yeah.
I think yeah, you can help so many more people by building a brand, putting a lot of content out for free, and just like, yeah, helping more people. Whereas like, yeah, like I said, you would know, working one-on-one with people is just like, it's limited.
Yeah, it's so interesting. We can only have one James at one time in one place, and kind of looking at the scalability front of things. What do you think? My next question is what do you want the theme to be for 2024? What do you want the theme to be? Answer that question any way you want. What do you want your theme to be for 2024 when you're looking back on it after it's over?
I'm gonna say lifestyle, actually.
Interesting. What do
Yeah.
you mean by lifestyle?
I want to build, like what we were talking about. I want to build stuff around the life. Like you want to build stuff that supports what you want, rather than like you want to build from your ideal space rather than try and build something that you think points to it later. Um, yeah, I think like a lot of people talk about lifestyle businesses, but realistically, I think at the end of the day, you need to optimize the lifestyle first,
Yeah.
or at least back to what we were saying, get clear on what it actually is that you want. Like, what are you actually optimizing for? And just doing that stuff. Like, there's nothing, you know, most people, what most people want from a lifestyle perspective is like there's nothing stopping you from doing the majority of that stuff now. Like people always
Yeah.
think they need more money to do stuff. It's like the reality is you don't need more money to get healthier. You don't need more money to have better relationships,
No.
etc. Right? Obviously more money helps, but I think like, as a really high level, money just reduces the number of sources of stress. It doesn't make you feel better or happier or anything like that. So like to the extent that you're unhappy because of certain stresses, money will help alleviate unhappiness, but it doesn't make you any happier. So I think there's nothing stopping you from making yourself happier, like optimizing for certain things first, and then figuring out how do I kind of bankroll that later, you know?
Beautiful. Well, James, I can't thank you enough for coming on to the show. Hopefully our folks got a lot. I know a lot of my questions were selfishly directing towards my own lifestyle and business. It's cool to hear it from your side of the world and all you have going on. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we get out of here today?
No, I think like it's been great to be on, and I think your audience is coaches, and I think there's a really unique and important place for coaches, like people that know how to do stuff and how to help people. And I think at the end of the day, there's a huge opportunity online to just get yourself out there. Like, you know, at the end of the day, it's about helping people. And there are so many, the internet is your window to more people. So, like, more impact. That's really it, dude.
All right, James. Well, you stick around here. We're at the outro for the show. We'll be chatting afterwards. But in case anyone needed to hear it, I love you. You're a badass. You guys got it today. Have an incredible Friday and this weekend. And let's keep rocking and rolling and being the best versions of ourselves. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I'll see you guys 8 a.m. with episode 431 Monday morning. Have a good weekend, everybody. Cheers, friends. We're out. Peace. All righty. That is